Hello, it's Sunday, September 14th in the year 2025. God bless you wherever you may be, wherever you may find yourself on God's wonderful, motionless, great flat earth plane covered by His glorious firmament dome, protecting us all from any danger that may be out there. Welcome to Darkness is Falling video number 404 in this series exposing the Jesuit Vatican shadow empire as the true cause of all revolutions, genocide, war, and deception for the last 500 years, and the one and only candidate for the fourth iron Roman beast system described trampling and crushing the nations in the prophetic books of Daniel and Revelation. And yes, the Roman Catholic Empire is the cause of all revolutions, genocide, war, and deception for the last 500 years. There is only one cause, and that is the Roman Catholic Empire, the Vatican. Call it what you want. That wicked city state in the city of Rome in Italy is the cause of all wickedness for the last 500 years and prior to that, at least 1700 years. But I'm talking about the last 500 years because it has been controlled by the Jesuits for most of that time. So it is the Jesuit military order of Rome that is behind all the revolutions, genocide, war, deception for the last nearly 500 years. There is no other cause. There is no other explanation for the wickedness and violence that has invaded the earth and increased in intensity over the last 300 to 500 years. There's no other cause. And the Bible tells us this in Revelation chapters 17 and 18. If you have not fully understood this yet, please go there and read what God has to say about who controls everything in the world today. You won't be given all the details, but there is enough there for us to understand who's behind the madness and the mayhem that is rising all around us daily. Now, first of all, thank you to all of you for your prayers as I attempt to finish this task given to me by God 10 years ago. Yes, this was given to me by God. This is not something that I just thought one day might be a good idea to do. No. If you knew anything about my life, and you don't know much, because I don't share that much, because it's not important. What is important is the message and serving God the way He has commanded us to serve Him. That's what's important, not my life. I do share some things out of my life as I feel that it might be beneficial for your faith, but that's it. Now, I appreciate your prayers more than you can know. I received this commission supernaturally while I was living in Croatia in 2015. What I am doing is not from me. It wasn't my decision one day to just start a ministry. That was far from my mind 10 years ago as I pursued a new vocation in art. Yes, I got started as an artist very late. I have lived several, maybe 3 or 4 lives, 3 or 4 different phases of my life. God has allowed me to live these different experiences so that I can understand and fully share with you about what is going on. Now, I didn't know that 10 years ago. I didn't know that 20 years ago. But that's what has been happening to me. Now, what's been happening to you is your story. I can only share with you what's been happening to me and how God has been working in my life to accomplish His perfect and good will. Now, God very gently woke me up and redirected me into His service once again 10 years ago. I heard the call and have answered it to the very best of my ability. There is nothing in this ministry, nothing in this for me, except to serve God and His people wherever they may be and to carry out this watchman ministry until my time is up. Does it sound serious? Yes. It is very serious what has been happening, particularly over the last 5 years. But in general, over the last 20 years, or 25 years almost, since 9/11, things have accelerated. Now, you may not have noticed it, doesn't matter. They have. World events have accelerated, and we'll take a look at how we were warned about that in this video message. So there is no money in this for me. Nothing. Not 1 cent. I don't do this for personal glory. I don't do this to get attention or adulation or get followers or subscribers. No, no, no. If that sounds strange to your ears, in today's world where everyone is scrabbling after money and adulation, attention, fame, fortune, that's not me. That's not why I'm doing this. I am not just another online social media ministry business. Yes, business, ministry business, selling stuff and begging for followers and paid subscribers. I hope that you have understood this clearly if you have been watching these video messages for a while. I ask nothing from you except your prayers so that I have the wisdom and strength to continue doing this. People are now very suspicious of any kind of online ministry, and they should be, because 99% of them are charlatans, deceiving the people and making merchandise of them. Now, my only desire is that you get biblically saved with the Spirit-filled gospel, and that you get equipped with the knowledge you need to recognize and avoid the mark of the beast, so that you finish the race and get over the line at the end and are received joyfully into the kingdom of the Lord Jesus Christ. That is my only concern. Not only for myself, for my family, and for all you out there who are listening to these messages. Periodically, I need to say this so that people are reminded that we are in a serious situation, and it is going to get even more dire. I am not joking or kidding about anything I have been sharing in these messages. for almost 10 years now. You can either accept what I share or you can reject it and walk away. That is your personal choice. I cannot make you, neither do I want to make you believe what you don't want to believe. Now, my continuous great hope and joy is that you will hear the warning in the messages and that you will see the perilous time we are now in as we come to the end of this age, and that you will modify your life according to God's word so that you are ready to go. Go where? Go to heaven. And to go to heaven, you must die. You and I must die to go to heaven, to get into the kingdom. Excuse me. That's the reality, people. Get your head around it. Accept it. Do not live for this world. Get ready for the kingdom. Because it's closer now than it ever was. And that's why God called me to do this. To warn those of you who are listening to stop playing around, if you have been, get serious, and get right with God today. All right. Let's have a look at a few things that are happening in this serious time we are living in. The Jesuits are at it again, as they always are. They never stop. With another public celebrity assassination psy-op. Ask yourself, was this event even real? Did someone really get killed, or was it another sleight of hand trick deceiving the masses? If it's all over the MSM, excuse me, then you can be sure that the story is being promoted heavily by the Jesuits. They want people to know about it. They want people to rage about it. They want people to fear about it. Remember the 2 fake Trump assassination shootings? Sometimes people really do get killed in these staged events, but often they don't. It is really hard to divide who got killed and who didn't, because they are so good at staging these events using camera footage and CGI. Many people just appear to get killed and are secretly spirited away. There have been so many shooting psyops in North America in the last 5 years alone that if you weren't studying them with a very critical eye, then you could be deceived into believing that shootings are happening every day and that they are all real. And that is exactly what the media want you to believe in order to cause rising fear in the population. Don't get distracted with these stories. Don't waste your time chasing petty details. That's what the Jesuits want you to do. They want you to chase the social media stories and the MSM stories for details that don't matter. If someone was shot, they were shot. If they were not, they were not. What can you or I do about it by involving ourselves in millions of little details that may be true or not? Nothing. It doesn't change a thing. So, knowing all this stuff doesn't change anything. Keep your attention focused only on what matters and your relationship daily with Jesus Christ, and keep a casual eye on world news channels. But don't get caught up in these MSM media stories. It doesn't matter if Charlie Kirk was killed or not. Seriously, it doesn't matter. Charlie Kirk is a Masonic psy-op 100%, dead or alive. Kirk is not the good guy, and he is not a martyr. And they are trying to make him into a national hero and martyr. How you become a martyr for being shot, I don't know. I don't know how that works. I don't understand that mentality. Charlie Kirk can also not be a Christian doing what he was doing. Now, when the beast pushes somebody as a Christian, you can be sure that he was not. Not a chance. He was a tear and a deceiver doing what he was doing in his life. It's all in the numbers, people. We are told that he was shot with a 30.06 Mauser rifle. Right there, you have the 3 times 6, which equals 666 in that rifle model. Coincidence? No. These things are not coincidence. They must tell us using numbers and symbols. It's up to us to figure it out. Kirk was shot on September the 11th, which is 9/11. They were celebrating the Twin Towers with this shooting psy-op. If you don't understand that, that's how the satanic mind works. The surname Kirk means circle in Old English and is the root word for church. Charlie Church, that's his name. Charlie Church is a 33. CC, Charlie Church, equals 33. That is all you have to know. 3 true facts proving the truth using occult numbers. Whether Kirk is dead or alive is totally irrelevant. We will never be told the truth about what happened. Don't waste your time chasing these stories. And because that is exactly what Satan wants you to do. This distraction is going to be milked for all it's worth by the Jesuit MSM. We'll never stop hearing about it. Charlie Kirk, Charlie Kirk. It'll be brainwashing with the Charlie Kirk 33. It's sorcery, people. This is what the Romans do. They assassinate. They carry out psyops. It's the create a problem, get a reaction, and bring in your solution, which enslaves the people more and more and more. Incident by incident. Now, the goal of this psyop is, as I always say, division. Divide and conquer is always the strategy used to get people into groups and fighting with each other. The USA is now so divided that violent confrontation may become inevitable and soon near you. So be alert to what is going on around you at all times. Because violence can erupt from out of nowhere. They can make this happen. And unless you're paying attention, you can get caught up in it. And you may lose your life. Think I'm joking? No. I am not joking about anything I say. Now, the scripture commands us to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. That means we don't get caught up in that craziness. We don't get involved in it because we're innocent of violence, but we're wise to see what is going on. So we are to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves, and in regard to electronic media of any kind, we had better be sober and alert at all times, watching things with a very, very critical eye. Do not just believe what you see and hear. Do not be deceived by media stories. The real danger comes from being swayed by falsehood propagated by celebrity social media influencers. They are an online army working, as I said, for money, status, and ultimately for the kingdom of darkness. Beware. Now, here's another reminder that racism doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. Anti Semitism doesn't exist. There are no races. There is only one race of people in the world. They're called people. And they're all made in God's image. There are different ethnicities or cultural groups. There are different skin colors. However, there is only one race of people in the world today. Anyone talking about racism or anti-Semitism is just plain ignorant and has no understanding of the truth. If they are talking like this, you should not be listening to them because they are lying to you whether they know it or not. They are not telling the truth. There is only one race of people in the world, and they are all descended from Adam and Eve via Noah and his 3 sons. There is no such thing today as Jewish anti-Semitism. All Arabic peoples are Semites. That means they're descended from Shem, Noah's son. That's where the word Semite, Shemite, that's what it means. All Arabic peoples are Shemites. Today's fake Jews are not Shemites. They are imposters. They are Caucasian, white-skinned, blue-eyed, blonde-haired people. Many of them. The only anti-Semitism that is taking place is the war being conducted against certain Arabic peoples of the Middle East. It has nothing to do with the false state of Israel that was created by the Jesuits. If you have not understood this yet, I'm telling you now, anti-Semitism is false. There's no such thing. And there's no such thing as racism. So what is it? What is it when people don't like each other, hate each other, fight with each other, argue with each other? Well, that's just simply called intolerance. Right? That's simply called hatred because somebody has a different opinion. It's got nothing to do with anti-Semitism. Nothing to do with racism. Please understand this, because these are the cards the Jesuits are using to incite violence between groups of people who are all made in the image of God and all descended from the same father and mother. These are the lies that are used in the world today to get people divided and fighting with each other over things that don't matter, ultimately. Now, finally, I want to show you some pictures of the Pope's Roman law enforcers. Let's have a look at them now, and I'll make some comments that are worth being mindful of. Okay, here's a picture that's a little bit pixelated, but it'll serve the purpose. Here we have a picture of ICE officers. Call them police, call them what you want. These are Roman papal beast law enforcers. Now you say to me, no, they work for the U.S. government. The U.S. government is a Roman national government controlled by the Jesuits. These men are working for the Pope. Whether they understand this or not is totally irrelevant. These people are not your friends. They may be American citizens, but they are not American. They are soldiers working for the Pope to achieve his purposes in what is called North America, in the USA. They are not your friends. These men will come for you possibly one day if you're a Christian and if you refuse the mark of the beast. It's very possible that these people could also come to your door and drag you away under any false pretext. These are not your friends. These are not heroes. These are not there for your safety and protection. They are safeguarding the interests of the beast, his North American, U.S. interests. That's what these men protect. They are not there for you. These men can come and drag you away under any false pretext, such as immigration, at any time, because you have no rights, as I've said in many, many videos, and we are living under Roman law. We're not living under Canadian law, American law, French law, British law. No, we're living under Roman canon law. And these guys can basically do whatever they want, whatever they're told to do to you and I, because they are just guns for hire. They have no affinity towards a nationalist or patriotic cause. They are not real or true Americans in the traditional sense. I want you to understand this. Here's some more of these guys. These are Roman thugs carrying out orders from the U.S. government, but the U.S. government takes their orders from the Jesuit order. Now, these guys, like I said, can come at any time, break down your door, drag you away for minor infractions because you're under suspicion, because somebody made a false accusation. These guys have the authority to come and break down your doors. They have the authority to shoot you if you resist. And they are not your friends. And if you'll notice that many of these men have dark skin, they are Roman Catholic, many of them are Hispanic, and they have their faces covered. Why would they have their faces covered? What are they hiding? Well, they don't want you to know who they are, essentially. Why? They don't want retribution against them by their neighbors, by the community, because of what they are doing. So they're going to hide their faces so that they are Anonymous. You want to know the real anonymous? It's these guys. They are anonymous. They work for the Jesuits. If you work for the U.S. government, you're working for the papal beast. You're working for the Roman Catholic Pope. Let's get that understanding very, very clear. Here's another one. Masked, black gloves, vests, armed with guns, ready to come and drag you away for any minor infraction or any accusation or report that may have been made about you, against you. They are arresting American citizens, people. Now, these guys are American, but they're not American. No American is going to go and arrest a law-abiding, innocent person in their own community, in their own country. That's not American. These guys are representative of their counterparts in every single country. Every government has these guys ready and waiting, willing and waiting for pay to go and arrest innocent people, beat them up, torture them, break their doors down. Think it can't happen in America? It's already happening in America, and it's been happening for years, people. If you're not awake yet, please wake up to the reality. These guys are not there for you and for your safety and for your protection. They are there to guard the interests of the Pope. And if you threaten those interests, they will drag you away, even if you have a legitimate complaint or protest. Here's some more of them. Photo taken from the Los Angeles Times. These guys, many of them are ex-army, ex-police. They're thugs. They're brutal. They don't care about whether they are doing what they are doing is right or wrong. They just follow orders for money. And many of them are brutalized young men looking for a cause to fight for. And you'll notice the color of the skin. Many of them are Hispanic. If you think all those Hispanic people are being deported, they are not. They are being recruited against you. Everything the government says is a lie. Here's some more. Do these people look Hispanic? Some of them look like they're black. These are the guys that are coming for you, people. Federal officer, Homeland Security, ICE. It's all the same. They're all papal beast law enforcement. And they will not mess around when they have an order to come and collect you or pick you up. They can shoot you on site, right on the spot. Here's another one. Look at these guys. They are not Americans. These are brainwashed young men looking for action, ready to brutalize fellow citizens. They are not there for you. They work for the papal beast. And many of these people have no conscience. They're shot up. They are mind controlled, brainwashed. They've been playing violent video games since they were born, many of these young men, and they will shoot because they think it's exciting, it's thrilling, and that they have the right to do so because they have a badge. These are not the good guys, people. And I just want to put a face to the enemy. These guys are your enemy because if anybody's going to come for you, it'll be these people. Especially as a Christian, if you resist finally the mark of the beast, and this picture is very small. Here's another one, a little bit pixelated. There you go. There they have somebody on the ground. They've got two guys beating up on some guy who has probably done nothing. He's been led into the country only to be made a victim years later, scapegoated, and then locked up and deported back to what a fate that only you and I can guess at. Maybe death. This is what the U.S. government has been doing. They've been playing games with people's lives for a long, long time, as long as we've been alive. Scapegoating, blaming people for things that they have not done, deporting American citizens. This is what has been going on. Injustice, I'll tell you about Roman justice. There is no justice with Roman justice. It's injustice all the way because they can just change the rules of the game at any time as it suits them. And that's exactly what they are doing now. So please be aware of what's going on. Please be aware that these men are not there to protect you and keep you safe. They are there to enforce and protect papal interests in the USA. That's it. That's all. And they will shoot to kill you if you threaten any of the beast's interests in the USA. Or any other country for that matter. This is happening all over the world. In this video message, I'm coming back to the absolute importance of understanding that the United Nations is the image of the beast world government described in Revelation 13 and is driving all world events under the direction of the Jesuit order. The United Nations is the world government, not the U.S. government, not the Russian government, not the Chinese government. No national government rules this world. The United Nations is the only world government and is behind all world events. So all this negative events that you're seeing happening, war, has been directed by the UN. It is not there to maintain peace. It is there to create war. War, disruption, genocide, revolution, disaster, deception is what the United Nations is all about. That is how they divide and control and conquer people, not with peace. The peace that will come at the end will result in the slavery and misery of every human being that's left alive at the end of this campaign, this medical inquisition campaign. So when I say all world events, I mean All. Everything that is happening now is being caused by the United Nations. The UN is what can be described as an inverted government, a totally inverted government. It's a black hole government. It's a negative 100%. This means that all its laws and regulations are negative. Every law and regulation from the United Nations is against mankind. And you'll see this very, very shortly. That means that every man, woman, and child living on God's great, motionless, flat earth plane, the UN is against everyone, every soul, every living soul. Everyone. No exceptions to the rule. And that means that all government, every level of government from federal to state to local is against you and I, no matter where you live, because they are following 100% United Nations government rules and regulations for the future. Agenda 21 and Agenda 30 are the basis of all new laws. Please understand this and get this clear in your minds. It is the United Nations that is driving forward everything that is happening in the United States right now, everything that is happening in Europe, everything that is happening on all continents, in China, in Russia. All these governments are doing what they're doing under direct orders from the United Nations, from the Jesuits. That's how it works. So the United Nations is a total negative. Nothing good comes out of the United Nations, ever. That's not its purpose. Its purpose is to crush the nations and bring them all into subjection 100% to the Roman papal beast, in accordance exactly with biblical prophecy. Now, all government departments everywhere are under Roman Catholic United Nations control and are working to achieve the goals of the Roman Catholic papal beast. And I explained a lot about the United Nations beast world government in my video number 261 titled The Image, posted in December 2022, almost 3 years ago. And then again in video number 389 titled Rise of the Image, about 8 or 9 months ago. Please go and watch those video messages if you haven't already done so, as they contain a lot of detail that I won't repeat here. There's no time or space. There has been a world government since 1945, and it has been issuing mandates for 80 years now, whether you understood this or not. No, the United States is not in control. Trump is not controlling anything. Russia is not in control. China is not in control. The United Nations is in control under direct orders from the Jesuits. That's how it works. Whatever you see and hear in the MSM is based on lies. National leaders like Trump are just following orders. This wicked he-she is not doing its own thing. Satan has a very, very strategic plan, and Trump is following orders in order to achieve that plan for Satan, which is total world domination under his beast king. Now, because all government is now totally against mankind, yes, it is, all government is now totally against their peoples. So we as God's people are not to obey its orders. Now, please hear this clearly and carefully. Romans chapter 13, 3, verses 3 to 4, no longer applies because all government is evil. Have been speaking about this for years now. And I'm reminding you here again. Paul writes this: for rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. You see, the rulers are now a terror to good conduct. Yes, they are. You can do everything that is right, and you can still be thrown in jail and accused falsely. And it's happening to many, many people. Rulers are now a terror to good conduct. It's inverted. The bad guys often get away, or they just get a rap on the knuckles, and they go out and they commit another crime. So what Paul is saying now has been inverted by world government. Paul says, do you want to be unafraid of the one in authority? Then do what is right, and you will have his approval. Do people who are doing what is right have government approval today? No, they do not. You see, it's inverted. Bad people have government approval, not good people. Paul says in verse 4, for he is God's servant for your good. Is that true today? Are governments God's servants for our good today? No, they are not. Paul says, but if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not carry the sword in vain. That used to be the case often. Paul says he is God's servant, an agent of retribution to the wrongdoer. That's now inverted. This scripture has been twisted by Masonic preachers to put God's people into submission to follow evil Roman laws, resulting in sin. Yes, if you obey governments today, you will find yourself sinning against God with many things, not everything. Now, Paul states rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Is that true today? No, it isn't. Rulers are now a terror to those who do good, as I said before. It has been this way increasingly for the last 50 years. Do governments give their approval to those who do good? No, they don't. They are now punishing the innocent everywhere in the world, and good, the innocent and good, and they are rewarding those who are corrupt and evil in ever-increasing measure. You can see this in every facet of human society, in business, in religion, in education. If you are corrupt, you'll go to the top. Yes, you will. If you are good and you obey what is right, you will not be promoted. I have a lot of experiences of this in 70 years of living. I was never, ever promoted for doing what is right, but I was often offered advancement for breaking the rules, being corrupt, lying, cheating, or to be fraudulent. Yes, I was. Many times. If you do what is wrong, you will be advanced. Just be careful you don't get caught. And even if you do get caught, your punishment will likely be minimal. That is how the Roman justice system works. It's all inverted, people. If you haven't seen this or noticed this, I don't know where you've been. This is happening all over the place. They even gloat about it in Hollywood movies. How the bad guy gets off and the good guy gets punished. They do this. There's so many Hollywood movies that show this scenario. So, what Paul is saying applies to when governments are positive and do reward those who do good. But that's not the case. Hasn't been the case for some time. Rulers are now a terror to those who do good. So, do governments give their approval to those who do good? No, they don't. They are now punishing the innocent and good and rewarding those who are corrupt and evil. Paul says the governments are God's servants for our good. Well, that used to be right at different times in history. And in North America, it has generally been right up until the 80s, when lawlessness increasingly set in. It isn't anymore. It's not the case anymore. The governments are not working for the good of God's people, or anyone for that matter. And the laws encourage the lawlessness, because when you do good, you get penalized and punished. So this encourages people to not do good, but to increasingly flout laws and regulations in order to advance their own desires. I'm here to say, do not obey wicked orders from any government authority today, causing you to sin against God, especially with regard to health. Do not mask, do not test, do not inject in order to do so. Control of health means control of the body, and this is Satan's chosen strategy to get into your body and mind. Do not submit when ordered to do so. It will result in disobedience to God's higher command, which is, obey me, not the beast, and do not mark under any circumstances. Do not test, do not inject. That's marking. You're marking your body with Satan's toxic chemical compounds. Now I'm going to show you a series of short video clips taken from a longer video dating back to 2001 about the Beast United Nations World Government and its plans for you and I. I'm going to comment on each clip and point out why it is impossible to stop this satanic agenda. The speaker is Dr. Michael S. Kaufman, who you might be familiar with, and he fought the UN plan in the U.S. government, but to no avail. He only succeeded maybe in postponing the inevitable for a few short years. Sadly, Kaufman was a Christian humanist and possibly a do-gooder Freemason. He failed to understand that he was actually fighting against the fulfillment of Bible prophecy in his zeal to save America. He didn't know his Roman enemy. Totally oblivious to his Roman enemy. He didn't recognize that he was opposing the Roman papal beast and his image world government. He didn't even understand the time in which he was living because he was a futurist. The USA is an evil nation. Now, if you're American and you're listening to me, I am not talking about you personally. I'm talking about the nation and what it is. Is Canada an evil nation? Yes. Is the UK an evil nation? Yes. They're all evil. There's no such thing as a righteous nation. So when I say the USA is an evil nation, I'm not singling out individuals, and this applies to all countries. The USA is an evil nation, and while very religious, it has the blood of millions of innocent victims from illegal conflicts worldwide on its hands, including more than 60 million abortions since Roe versus Wade in 1973, and more than 1 million abortions in the year 2023 alone. right at the end of 3 years of testing and injecting COVID poisons. Now ask yourself, why were women aborting so many babies in 2023 in the United States? Why is that? Was it happening worldwide? I assume so. But I'm just talking about the United States here. Why is that? Now, these aren't miscarriages. Personally, I believe many of these babies were vaccine defective, and many women knew this beforehand because of ultrasound scans, and they decided to terminate their pregnancies. Now, a percentage of these babies were simply unwanted. Now, when we add up the numbers of the slaughtered at home in America and abroad, carried out by American agency in the 20th century alone, the numbers of deaths, the numbers of murders is staggering. Has God forgotten this? Ask yourself. Has God forgotten any of these souls that were slaughtered by American soldiers, American forces, American policies, American directives, American interference? Has God forgotten these innocent victims? Has he been sleeping? Has he just winked at this bloody carnage as if it were some kind of minor indiscretion? No, sir. Read the Bible, and you'll read about God's remembrance of every soul, every innocent soul that was murdered because of U.S. imperialism under Jesuit command. The American nation will be and is now being held to account for all these wicked atrocities. Temporal judgment is now hanging over America as a corporate nation of people for its crimes against mankind. Now you may say, that's nothing to do with me. I wasn't involved. Maybe not. But nations are held accountable for what they do, past and present. And if you're American, you are going to be caught up in this judgment, temporal judgment. And that temporal judgment is now hanging over America. Now, Americans insist on living by the sword, and they will die by the sword. Think I'm joking? The Bible says so in Matthew 26, verse 52. Then Jesus said unto him, put up again your sword into his place, for all they that take the sword shall perish with the sword. That is a universal principle for all ages, whether by gun or knife or spear or bomb or any other lethal weapon. The warning stands forever. Live by the sword and you will die by the sword. And America is a nation that insists on living by the sword. So you figure out what that means. Now, we don't have that problem too much in Canada. People still running around with guns, apparently. And, of course, if you have no weapons, you can't fight back. But God never told us to fight back. Ever. And if people do fight back, they will die by the sword that they wield. And that's been proven all through history. Now, Michael Kaufman tried to warn everyone with the understanding that he had, but he only succeeded in perpetuating the global elite fiction. You know, the global elite, those shadowy group of men that nobody knows who they are, yeah, that fiction that runs rampant today on the internet, and the arrogant idea that the people can rise up and stop Satan's world ruler. Or did he know about the Jesuit Vatican threat and kept quiet to save his life? Was he threatened? I don't know. We don't know. We will never know because he's dead. Now, as a result, almost everyone today is ignorant of who it is that is orchestrating the madness from behind the smokescreen and how this is all going to play out and end. Everyone's ignorant, virtually. Yet the answers were right there in black and white in the Bible the whole time. Did Michael S. Kaufman go to the Bible and ask God to show him who the enemy was? I doubt it, because apparently he wasn't telling anybody who the enemy really was. He was talking about global elites. So basically, he perpetuated a lie, a fiction that is still all over the internet today. Nobody knows who those bad guys are. They're just global elites. The Bible tells us who they are. And I've been telling people for 10 years who the enemy is. Now, let's watch this first video clip, and I'll see you after.
As various nations and power groups struggle for supremacy over this new world government, and how everybody else in the entire world seems to know what's going on except the American citizens who have been kept in the dark. Now, one of the things that has made me extremely successful, and one in which the New Agers, the globalists, do not want to touch or argue with from the standpoint of trying to prove me wrong, is that I use their own documents against them. Hence, we will be using a lot of overheads tonight that I take direct quotes out of what different globalists have said, or United Nations documentation, or United States documentation, to show you step by step what has been actually happening, where we are today, and where we're likely to be in the near future. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started so that we don't go into the wee hours of the morning. And I want to start with something that was happening way back in the creation of the United Nations. The United Nations, when it was sold to the American people back in 1945, we were told basically that there was no intention on the part of any of the leadership in the world to make the United Nations into a world government. Well, that's not true. The following year, Assistant Secretary William Benton made a speech before UNESCO. That was the first year of a UNESCO, in which he said, and I quote, "As long as a child breathes the poisoned air of nationalism, education and world-mindedness can produce only precarious results. As we have pointed out, it is frequently the family that infects the child with extreme nationalism. The school should therefore use the means described earlier to combat family attitudes that favor jingoism, or as it's defined, nationalism, and we shall see presently recognize in nationalism the major obstacle to development of world-mindedness. We are at the beginning of a long process of breaking down the walls of national sovereignty. UNESCO must be the pioneer."
First of all, Kaufman's assertion that various nations and power groups are struggling for supremacy is blatantly false and misleading. That's not what has been happening. The United Nations is jostling peoples against each other, but all the leaders have been told to do this. The people are ignorant, but the leaders are not. They know what they're doing. They're following orders. So what Kaufman was asserting is false and misleading. This is the same lie that everyone is propagating on the internet today. It implies that nations are sovereign and just doing their own thing, which they are not. They absolutely are not. They are all following orders. There's a master plan. Satan always has a master plan, and they are all following the master plan under Jesuit orders through the United Nations. There is no struggle between nations and power groups. There is an appearance of struggle as leaders betray their people for the papal beast. All the conflicts are planned and orchestrated by world leaders, like I said, under Jesuit instruction. Let me repeat it again. There is no struggle. There is no genuine struggle. They are all working together to a Jesuit master plan under the United Nations directive to deceive the peoples of the world into a one world, one mind communitarian collective, just as the Bible says. We are looking at a world that is increasingly communitarian. We're shuffling towards it, step by step by step, to total communitarianism. Now, Kaufman's assertion that everyone knew what was going on, but Americans didn't, is another lie. People have been warning about the Jesuits and the Roman Catholic cult for hundreds of years, and the American people essentially ignored them from generation to generation in favor of chasing the good life now. Has this happened everywhere else in the world? Yes, wherever prosperity has reigned for the last 100 years. Yes. So, they were not kept in the dark, and each generation will be held responsible excuse me, for refusing to repent and obey God's word. Mass repentance would have moved God's hand to intervene and save the American nation from this current disaster. But mass repentance was never going to happen because Americans have been taught to be materialistic, progressive, religious, and they are not interested in obeying God. And we see this. If you're listening to this, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking about the whole population in general. Now, does nationalism come from family, as the UN speaker asserted? Think about it. Where does the propaganda and ideology fostering nationalism, Americanism, come from? It comes from government via the media, whether newspaper, radio, TV, or the internet. And it also comes from schools. Now, this is where the nationalist, patriotic mind conditioning comes from originally. It's interesting how the family is blamed for indoctrinating children with nationalism. What they are really targeting is Christian belief, not nationalism. Christianity is always the target in a roundabout way for these wicked Satanists. Satan wants to stop parents from teaching children biblical faith, and political ideology is used as a front to scapegoat Christian belief. Now, UNESCO is clearly stated as being the pioneer agency in destroying national sovereignty, and UNESCO is a UN agency. How many times do I have to say that the world is controlled by the UN and its agencies? People still do not believe this. UNESCO working with other Jesuit agencies like Tavistock and the CIA, have been steadily eroding cultural values in the USA and worldwide since the 1960s. The collapse of the U.S. economy will finish whatever is left of U.S. nationalism. The same will happen in all other Western countries. You can see this happening right across the board in Australia, in Canada, New Zealand, South Africa, India, all former British colonies. All hold some form of Western sense of value. Maybe not India as much, but large swaths of the world hold Western values. And those Western values come out of the Masonic Enlightenment, and some of it comes from biblical principles. It's a real twisted, corrupted can of worms. Now, in the end, people won't care who is in power as long as they get fed. Think I'm kidding? It's just a matter of time. Starving people will do desperate things. And Americans are slowly edging towards poverty and starvation. Many people, a large swath of the population, is now unemployed, homeless, and experiencing desperation. Think I'm kidding? If you have not seen this, you have not been looking. I've been talking about it for a long time. And it's also being talked about to some degree online in other social media channels. Now here is the second video clip from the original video. Please watch, and I'll see you after.
That was 54 years ago, and we're almost there now. Perhaps by the end of the year 2001, we will have a world government. Now, it may not happen that soon, and we'll discuss the ins and outs and the ramifications of what's liable to happen a little bit later on in my discussion. One of the things that we need to recognize as to how this is being done. And the best, most succinct diagram or illustration of this that I could find comes from a man by the name of Professor Carroll Quigley, who was a Harvard economist, who also a historian, and also was at George Washington University. Is that right? That seems wrong for some reason. Georgetown University, thank you, in Washington, D.C., where he taught William Jefferson Clinton. During the 1950s and the 1960s, Professor Carroll Quigley had an inside track within the international community in which he communicated, they accepted him as one of their own, and he studied from a historical standpoint the ins and outs and nuances of what this group of people were attempting to do. And he wrote a book then that was published in 1966 called Tragedy and Hope. Some of you may have a copy of this. It's about that thick. It's over 6,000 pages long. It is literally an in-detail description of every action and what they're planning on doing. That book lasted for 1 week on the shelves before he was forced to remove it. And obviously, because it was a week on the shelves, there were copies made, and it's been reprinted since, so it is available still. And one of the paragraphs, I think, that was taken out of this, I have not read the entire book, obviously, but it is a tremendous reading source if you have the time, have a few spare hours, just to pick it up anywhere and start reading what these globalists are attempting to do. And this one paragraph really describes, I believe, exactly what it is they're trying to do. And he says that the global elites' aim is nothing less than to create a world system of financial control in private hands to be able to dominate the political system of each country and the economy of the world as a whole. The system was to control in a feudalistic fashion by the central banks of the world acting in concert by secret agreements arrived at frequent private meetings and conferences. And of course, that's still being done today. It's primarily through the financial community, the global financial community, primarily of the United States and Britain, that is advancing this world government, but also all of the European market, the European Union, as we'll see a little bit later on.
Imagine Kaufman thought 24 years ago that world government was still coming, as in a future event, not recognizing that the world government had already started in 1945. How is that possible? You see, he didn't think the UN was the world government. Why is that? He was deceived, like so many, that the UN was a toothless entity, and that was and still is the deception that keeps the world in the dark. The beast, one world government, has been dictating to us all our lives, most of us listening to this. But now it's getting very serious. Now, Kaufman died in 2017, still believing that the world government was future because he couldn't see the image of the beast as it is described in Revelation. He didn't recognize it. Why? Because he wasn't taught. The teaching in the body of Christ has been so bad for 100 years now, nobody knows anything. Now, it is amazing that this man, Kaufman, is quoting Carroll Quigley. Quigley was most likely a Jesuit. At least he was a Jesuit agent. He was Roman Catholic. And there is a lot of detail about his academic achievements, but very little detail about his early life, family, marriage, and death at the age of 66. How did he manage that? Now, there may be information in other places, but I could not find much information, personal information about this man online. Now, Quigley was a polymath and writer and moved fluidly through Jesuit institutions and government agencies. Please take note of that. And how is that possible? How was that possible? How is that possible? Well, that's what these guys, that's what you got to notice and understand about these guys who move fluidly through Jesuit institutions and government agencies worldwide. These guys are high-level insiders. Now, Quigley wrote histories that do not expose the power and control and wickedness of the Roman Catholic cult or the Jesuit order or the U.S. military. Quigley was not telling the truth, so why would anyone quote him as a source of truth? Only someone who didn't recognize that Quigley was a Jesuit. That's who. Why would you believe everything Kaufman says if he didn't even recognize who Quigley was, or he didn't even recognize who the world government was? Now, Quigley's book, Tragedy and Hope, has us running down a maze of rabbit holes, leading us away from Rome to a shadowy group of world power brokers called global elites. We are never told by Quigley who it is that pulls all the strings and that was pulling all his strings. Now, this shows us that Kaufman has no idea who is controlling world affairs, yet he thinks he does. He was running around for years, writing books, holding seminars and conferences, telling people that the global elites control the world. How useless is that? Who are these global elites? Well, he never said. Now, the classic book on the shelf for 1 week and then forced to remove its story, that's a classic. Quigley had his book, Tragedy and Hope, out on the shelves for 1 week, and then he was forced to remove it. By who? Who forced him to remove it? He wasn't forced to remove it. The publishers simply removed it. Now, how many times have I heard this ploy of putting something out there and then retracting it? Oh, you weren't meant to see that. This is what the Jesuits do. Oh, that was secret. You weren't meant to see that. But of course, everybody has copied Tragedy and Hope and knows what's in the book. So what's so secret? You see, it's all nonsense. Tell the story to anyone, and immediately they believe that the book must contain the truth. Must, because it was retracted. No, no, no. They do that to make the book more popular. Because if you remove something and say to people, no, 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 you can't have that, guess what? People are going to break their necks to get a hold of it, aren't they? Isn't that how people operate? That's just human psychology, people. Basic human psychology. Withhold something from a child, and he will break his neck to get it. The Jesuits use very basic psychology on people, and they fall for the ruse, the tricks every time. So, if this book really did contain the truth, well, it would be talking about the Jesuits of Rome and all their wickedness, right? But it doesn't. It just talks vaguely about what the globalists are planning to do, but the claims are so vague they mean nothing because no one knows who is doing what. There are no specific details given about where the master plan comes from to do all this. You see? You got to think, people, about how this operates and how these wicked people deceive the masses. These are the strategies they use. Now, here is the third video clip from the original video. Please watch, and I'll see you after.
The Council on Foreign Relations, many people think this is the boogeyman of the secret societies of the globalists. It's not. It's a front group. About 800 people belong to it. Mostly it's a good old boys club. However, there is a core at the center of the Council on Foreign Relations that is very active in promoting world government and is using the whole CFR apparatus, as it were, as a smokescreen. And they publish, usually in their publication called Foreign Affairs, those kinds of thinking that they're ready to institute in the world. And this one happens to be done in 1970, just 3 years after the publication of the Iron Mountain Report, which calls for, if we're going to create a world government, we can no longer use war as a mechanism to cause fear amongst populations and therefore allow us to control the behavior of populations through fear. We have to find an alternative, and the Iron Mountain Report, named after the first meeting held in Iron Mountain, New York, along the Hudson River, and those nuclear bunkers built into the mountainside there, where they actually have defined what it was that they wanted to substitute the threat of war for in order to be able to control populations. And they settled on, in 1967, in their publication called the Iron Mountain Report, the environmental holocaust. In 1970, 3 years after that publication, Foreign Relations began to publish a series of articles describing the ecological holocaust that was facing the world. And in this particular issue, the first issue, done by George Kennan to prevent a world disaster, where it was summed up in 3 points that the eco-crisis is a global threat so great that it endangers all of life on Earth. In other words, it's going to affect all of us if we don't do something about it. The crisis should be controlled by a partnership. Now, I want you to remember the word partnership, because the partnership is made up, it's an unholy triad between government and business, and today, non-governmental organizations. At the time this was written, non-governmental organizations did not exist. But now it's the unholy triad or unholy trinity made up of government, specifically the United Nations, business, and non-governmental organizations operating under a central international super agency. Now, this will be a supranational EPA-like organization. You're going to see this. We're going to come back to it several times during the talk tonight, where these globalists want to establish an international EPA-like organization that can control literally every action that every single human being on planet Earth takes. Under a central international superagency to regulate the environmental issues, and finally, the new crusade must proceed, at least to some extent, at the expense of the immensely dangerous preoccupations that are now pursued under the heading of national defense. So they are substituting the environmental holocaust for the threat of war. Because lest we solve global warming, ozone depletion, biological diversity destruction, all of these different things, acid rain, we are going to destroy the earth and us along with it. And we are the enemy. For those of you in the audience who are old enough, remember the old cartoon from Pogo, where he used to say on a frequent basis, we have met the enemy and he is us. And this is exactly the plan that these globalists have put forth and has been in operation for the last 30 some odd years.
Did you hear Kaufman say that the CFR is a front group? That is correct. I've talked about this in previous videos. The Jesuits have many front groups which they use and hide behind. When the Jesuits were caught subverting and intriguing kings and queens in Europe in the 18th century, they were expelled out of Europe and extinguished by the Pope in 1773. They learned their lesson from this disaster, if in fact it wasn't a deliberate ploy by the Jesuits themselves, right? I talked about this in previous videos, that the Jesuits may have extinguished themselves in order to disappear for a while and come back even bigger and better. So, if in fact it wasn't a deliberate ploy by the Jesuits themselves, and they applied the babushka doll strategy so that they would never ever be seen again to be directly involved in political affairs. Now, if you know what a babushka doll is, it's a doll with many dolls inside each doll. So you can have up to 5, 6, 7, 8 dolls inside each other, all inside one big doll. And this is the strategy that the Jesuits use. They have many, many, many walls or fronts or facades in front of them, organizations that they've created to hide behind and work through. So they were never going to be seen again to be directly involved in political affairs. They get other people to do their dirty work, and they pay them well for it. So they use agencies and roundtable groups and foundations and trusts and corporations and any other kind of organization through which they can work like an octopus unseen. An invisible octopus, like we saw in the James Bond movie titled Spectre. And what was the symbol of Spectre? A black octopus. That's the Jesuits. Now, the change of strategy in 1973 from war as a weapon of fear to environmental holocaust as a weapon of fear is true. That's what we see if we look back through the last 5 decades, last 50 years. Even though there has been many small wars since 1973 to impose regime change on different nations, to impose ideologies on different nations, excuse me, it is the gradual rise of the save the planet lie that has taken us to where we are today. That's a fact. Remember that the WHO, the World Health Organization, is constantly telling us that sick people means sick planet, and sick planet means sick people, so go and get your vaccines. You're going, huh? How does that tie together? Well, we are told that the viruses keep coming because the planet is sick. The planet is making viruses, and we need to save ourselves by vaccinating. It's a diabolical snake eating its tail, this story of viruses and vaccines. But what's driving it is save the planet. Save the dying planet. Save the sick planet by going and vaccinating yourself. And that's what pushed the whole COVID-19 psy-op, inquisition, medical inquisition. Now, the partnership that is managing the environmental crisis is true. There is a partnership. Governments, non-governmental organizations or NGOs, and businesses are all working together as stakeholders to manage the crisis, the environmental crisis for the Jesuit order. It is true that the goal is to control every action that every individual makes, and this is where we are heading fast. You and I are the enemy. This is why I've been talking continuously about the war against terrorism, because we, the ordinary people, are viewed as terrorists to be suppressed and contained and controlled via the marking program. The endless war on terror, which stepped up on 9/11, is against us. You and I. That's what COVID-19 was all about. We were being assaulted, suppressed, and marked for 3.5 years as a world population. Here is the 4th video clip from the video. Please watch, and I'll see you after.
If you're still not convinced, the founder and current leader of the Club of Rome, which in fact is real, despite many years of efforts to try to say that it's nothing but a right-wing conspiracy to discredit the global community, Aurelia Pecci, who actually created the Club of Rome, and it's the inner circle of the global elitists, in 1991 stated that while searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. All of these dangers are caused by human intervention. The real enemy then is humanity itself. And as Pogo said, we have met the enemy, and he is us. And of course, this finds its way through international leadership, especially within the Clinton administration. In 1997, Bill Clinton addressed the General Assembly of the United Nations, in which he said that the forces of global integration. Now, what is global integration? Global integration is the process of bringing together the nations of the world into a world government. Now, they call it global governance. And they'll always refer to it as global governance and will adamantly deny that this is world government. But you cannot govern without government. It's impossible. Therefore, what we're seeing being instituted is an absolute totalitarian world government that they're planning for the world. Absolute. If you take nothing away from here tonight, realize that we're looking at an absolute totalitarian government that they're trying to establish. We're not going to get into the heart of this. I did that 3 years ago when I was here, get that video, and I go into great detail explaining exactly the type of controls and the lack of controls and the lack of credibility and the lack of accountability to the people of the world that will make this a totalitarian government. So what Bill Clinton is saying, that the forces of global integration are a great tide inexorably wearing away the established order of things. Now, what is the established order of things here in the United States? It's our U.S. Constitution, for instance. Our civil rights. The fact that we are a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. That's the established order of things. And of course, they want to reverse this so that the people are merely tools of the state, where we revert to a statist type of government in which the state is all powerful.
The claims made by Kaufman about the Club of Rome being the inner circle just isn't true. Why would the Jesuits tell us who the inner circle is so that we could target it? It doesn't even make sense, people. See, once again, Kaufman does not know who his enemy is. So he's basically shooting in the dark, hoping to hit something. The Club of Rome is just like any other organization, like the CFR, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderbergs, Opus Dei, and the World Economic Forum. They are all Jesuit facade entities, organizations that the Jesuits work through, they hide behind him. Now, if you and I know about it, then it's not inner circle. It's not. The Jesuits aren't stupid. They have created a labyrinth of organizations to hide behind. It is a spider web of fantastic proportions. Excuse me. It is the high-level illuminized Freemasons that are the inner circle, if there is one. No one knows who those people are. They are faceless. I talked all about the illuminized Freemason inner group in my video called Illuminized. So if you haven't watched that, please go and watch that. I cannot remember the number, I'm sorry, but you'll find it. Now, the real enemy is humanity, is the truth. That's how the Jesuits see mankind. We are the enemy. So once again, Kaufman makes a dumb statement saying that global integration is the process of bringing the countries together into world government. Well, that already happened in 1945. It's done. Why he can't see this is either willful ignorance or unwitting naivety. And I believe he can't see it is because he's a futurist. That's the danger of Jesuit futurism, where everything is in the future. They refuse to look at now, that it's happening now, and historically, and they want to put everything into the future. It's a diabolical doctrine, futurism. So, Kaufman says you can't govern without government. Well, that's true. How does he think the world in 2001 is being governed if there is no world government? You can see the contradiction in his thinking. How does he think the world was being governed in 2001 when he made this video, if there is no world government? Well, you see, he thinks that the nations are sovereign and that the UN is some kind of happy nations get-together and problem discussion forum and no more. He thinks that the USA is sovereign in 2001. Nothing could be further from the truth. The USA has not been a sovereign nation since 1871 when it was turned into a business. USA Inc. 1871, people. And the same has been done to all the other nations of the world. So you can see this idea, thinking that nations are sovereign, is deadly because it immediately makes you believe that you are free, that your country is free, when you're not. So, like many, he is very wrong about the true world order, but he thinks he's right. He thinks he's telling us something fantastic. And he is, but he's not, because he doesn't expose who the cause is. There's another video I did called The Cause that you need to watch if you haven't seen that. I don't know the number of that video. There's too many videos now for me to remember all the numbers. But please go and find it. The cause of all the effects in the world. Cause and effect. There's one cause of all the effects, and you need to understand that cause. Kaufman did not understand the cause of all the effects because he thought the United States was a sovereign country, had a constitution, and he was free. Totally blind to the truth. So the totalitarian government that Kaufman says they are planning has been here for 4 generations, right under his nose in New York, the UN. They aren't trying to establish it. And 2019 proved that they can bring the whole world to a standstill virtually overnight. If that's not totalitarian, then I don't know what is. Kaufman talks about the lack of credibility and the lack of accountability of a totalitarian government. Is there accountability or credibility now to the people of the world? No. None. When was the last time you were consulted about what the United Nations was planning to do and asked your opinion to vote on it? Never. No one is ever consulted about what the United Nations does. No one. They have a plan, and they are going to ram it down your throat and mine if it kills them. And of course, it's not going to kill them. They're going to kill us doing this. Excuse me. So Kaufman did not understand. Now, I'm not attacking specifically Kaufman in this video. I'm pointing out why we are where we are. Because people like Kaufman were telling part truths and not alerting people to who the real enemy was. For whatever reason. Now, Kaufman talks about the U.S. Constitution as if it's a real thing. That's a big red flag. When people talk about the Constitution as a real thing, walk away. Stop listening. That person is going to tell you lies. If they haven't got that right, they're not going to get the other bits right. I guarantee it. So, talking about the Constitution as if it's a real thing, people are still all over the internet talking about the Constitution. The Constitution, this amendment, that amendment. It's dead. It's been dead since 1871. Now, this makes him less credible as a truth spokesman because it means that he's telling part truth. The mix, see? Truth and lies. Now, why doesn't he know that the U.S. Constitution was made null and void in 1871 when the United States of America became the United States, Inc.? Why does he not know that? That is American history. Fundamental, basic American history. I'll tell you why. Because it's not taught in the schools. Jesuits don't want every American knowing that. Is the information available? Yes. How come I know about it? And Kaufman doesn't. That's a red flag, isn't it? I'm nobody. Kaufman was somebody. Yes, he was. He was somebody. He was running around holding big conferences. trying to expose the global elites. You got to be somebody to do that. I can't do that. I'm nobody. I'm just a little voice on the internet squeaking away, warning people the best way I can about what has happened, what is happening, and what is coming. So there's been no constitution in the United States for 155 years. That's why the U.S. government just does whatever it wants when it wants. There is no constitution protecting people's rights. There is no government of the people, by the people, and for the people. That's nonsense. If you hear somebody saying this, run. There are no civil rights. It is patriotic nonsense. You don't have any rights. Ask the people that are being dispossessed of their land continuously if they have any rights. No, they do not. That is all long gone, and Kaufman knew nothing about it. That's the quality of truth-telling in 2001, sadly. Now, he was telling us something, but he wasn't telling us the important part. Now, that is very sad, and it is slightly suspicious at the same time. It was the established order of things a long time ago, but not anymore. Constitution, long gone. Canada also. 1982 was the death of the Canadian Constitution. In Australia, around 1901, 1904, something like that. Somewhere in that space of time, the Australian Constitution was null and void. They've done it in every country, people. Excuse me. There are no constitutions protecting civil rights. They have just led us down the garden path, making us believe that we have rights, when in fact, in reality, in real experience, we do not. The Roman U.S. state is all powerful. They can do whatever they want. And look, they are doing it. Look what Trump is doing. It is unprecedented and unwarranted as far as the stability and prosperity of the last 80 years go. The USA has become a pariah in the world, more so than it ever was. There is no democracy. People don't even know what democracy really is. So, much of what Kaufman says here about what the UN is saying is true, but what he's saying about world government is not true. Please understand this. Now here is the fifth video clip from the video, the longer video. Please watch, and I'll see you afterwards.
Going on, he says that people are susceptible to the misguided protectionism, to the poisoned appeals of extreme nationalism, and the ethnic, racial, and religious hatred. New global environmental challenges require us to find a new strategy of security. This word of security is a very big word in their vocabulary. They use it to justify all kinds of things. Nations have begun to put that strategy into place through a new network of institutions and arrangements. Through this web of institutions and arrangements, nations are now setting the international ground rules for the 21st century, isolating those who challenge them from the outside, unquote. And folks, do you feel isolated? Well, you now know that it's by design. It's not accidental. I think you probably realized that before, but it is happening, and we are being isolated from telling our side of the story to the American people to help them understand and make adequate and righteous decisions when the opportunity presents itself. The question is then, how do they do it? How in the world are they getting this agenda from the international level down to the local level? Well, they've got a plan for that too. Now, on the environmental side, there's probably a number of different plans, but from the environmental side, you have an organization called the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. Been in existence since the United Nations was created. It's not part of the United Nations Charter. It's a scientific advisor to the United Nations. But through the IUCN, such programs as ecosystem management, American Heritage Rivers, the Clean Water Initiative, the Endangered Species Act, and all the rules and regulations of the EPA, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the U.S. Forest Service, the U.S. Park Service, and so forth, are directly related. We're going to explain how that happens in a few moments, but before we do, I want to determine, or I want you to understand, what the purpose of the IUCN is, or this International Union for the Conservation of Nature. The purpose is to promote an alternative model for sustainable communities and lifestyles. Yes, you heard it right. The whole concept of sustainable development has come right out of the IUCN. And it's all over America now, based on eco-spiritual practice and wait a minute, now what is eco-spiritual practices and principles? Well, we're about to find out, because it affects you in a very, very negative way. To accelerate, as it says, this transition to a just and sustainable future, the problems that we face in the world today, humanity must undergo a radical change in its attitudes, values, and behavior. In response to this situation, a new global ethics is taking form and is finding its expression in international law. How in the world are they able to get it into international law? Well, you're about to find out. One last thing, these eco-spiritual practices and principles, and according to the United IUCN, in a biocentric approach, this is what they call it. In a religious context, it's called pantheism, the belief that nature is God. But in a biocentric approach, says the IUCN, the rights of nature are defended first and foremost on the grounds of the intrinsic value of animals, plants, rivers, mountains, and ecosystems, rather than simply on the basis of the utilitarian value or benefit to human beings. In other words, nature comes first. Nature's needs comes before man's needs. And we're going to see some very classic examples of that as we go through tonight's discussion.
Now, Kaufman says it's all by design. And that is 100% true. It is. I have been saying this forever. Everything that has been happening is all by design. It's all pre-planned. And possibly as it was planned 100 years ago. The Jesuits worked to long-range plans. Now, there is nothing accidental about what is taking place around us. It is all planned. The COVID tests and injections took social decline to a whole new level. So many people are sick and dying and mentally dysfunctional that the sheer weight of numbers is starting to collapse social cohesiveness. There's only so much stress society can take before it implodes or fragments into despair and violence. And if you haven't been noticing the decline of the brains, the minds of people around you, then I don't know what to say. You're not very observant, because I see it every day. Now remember that this video was recorded before 9/11, I believe. It was recorded before 9/11 in 2001. So Kaufman would soon witness the next step in what he is describing here. He says that the IUCN was created in 1948 in France. And this organization, is headquartered in Switzerland. Now, this is what an online encyclopedia states, and I quote, Julian Huxley, the first Director General of UNESCO, took the initiative to set up IUCN. The IUCN has a membership of over 1,400 governmental and non-governmental organizations from over 170 countries. That's nearly all the countries. That's like 85, 90% of the countries are involved with this organization. Some 17,000 scientists and experts participate in the work of IUCN commissions on a voluntary basis. It employs over 900 full-time staff in more than 50 countries. Its headquarters are in Gland, Switzerland. Every 4 years, IUCN convenes for the IUCN World Conservation Congress, where IUCN members set the global conservation agenda by voting on recommendations and guide the Secretariat's work by passing resolutions and the IUCN program. There's a program, a plan, people. And they are following this IUCN program. The IUCN has observer and consultative status at the UN, at the United Nations, and plays a role in the implementation of several international conventions on nature conservation and biodiversity. It was involved in establishing the Worldwide Fund for Nature, or the WWF, and the World Conservation Monitoring Center. Unquote. Excuse me. If you've been giving money to any of these organizations, you have been effectively flushing your money down the toilet and paying for your own enslavement. That's what you've been doing. Now, nature's needs come before man's needs. This is 100% true, and this is what we see happening worldwide, and this is what the IUCN program is pushing. People are increasingly being locked out of their natural heritage. United Nations laws are in lockstep with Roman canon law, and eco-spiritual values have taken precedence over any other spiritual values. So the IUCN program is dictating world spiritual values, which is the worship of nature. Can you understand how this is all fitting together, people? I hope you're getting this. Now, here is the 6th video clip from the longer video. Please watch, and I'll see you after.
And one of the things that we told the Senate in August of 1994 was that this treaty had not been written, but was going to be dependent upon a base document written by the United Nations called the Global Biodiversity Assessment. The U.S. Senate called the United Nations and asked for the Global Biodiversity Assessment. It was supposed to be in draft form, only to be told by the United Nations they had no idea what the Senate was asking for. They had not authorized the writing of this document. They had bad information. Go back and ratify our treaty. However, one of our men, there was 4 of us, one of the people knew somebody in New York, that knew somebody in England, that knew somebody in Germany, that knew somebody else, and we finally got a copy. It was the chapter 10 of this document. It was 300 and some odd pages long. The final document in published form is 1,140 pages long. And we scanned this document. We found it to be the most anti-human document that we could possibly imagine. And again, I go into far more detail. If you look up on the previous visit that I made with you, I go into detail with this document. I'm only going to touch on some high points here tonight. But it breaks it up, their view of reality, as it were, into 2 worldviews in the world today. The first worldview is of the Western worldview. That's the one that we live in today. And they say that the Western worldview is characteristic of large-scale societies heavily dependent upon resources brought from considerable distances. It is a worldview that is characterized by the denial of the sacred attributes of nature. Whoa, now wait a minute. Denial of the sacred attributes of nature? This is out of the United Nations documents. It goes on to say, which became firmly established about 2,000 years ago with the Judeo-Christian Islamic religious traditions. To its direct aim at all monotheistic belief systems, especially that of Christianity. This is a United Nations document. It goes on page after page, deriding Christianity as the primary source for all the evils done to the environment today. It does describe its own view of reality as this worldview. They call it the traditional worldview. And it says that the worldview of traditional societies tends to be strikingly different from the modern worldview. They tend to look at and view themselves as members of a community that not only includes other humans, but also plants and animals, as well as rocks. So now rocks are a member of your community that you have to share with. It goes on to say, even worse, people are then members of a community of beings, like human beings, living and non-living. So a rock is now elevated up to the status of a human being, and they're both equal in the eyes of this belief system. Now, many of us in this audience are probably Christians, and I do not want to say that we do not have a stewardship responsibility, because we do. But we should not ever hold up nature as being God, as they have done here, where a rock is equivalent to that of a human being. It concludes in this statement by saying, thus rivers may be viewed as mothers, animals may be treated as kin. Hence, we have the American Heritage Rivers Initiative, initiated by Bill Clinton about 3 years ago. It goes on to say that for most of human existence, traditional societies lived in an ethical paradigm in which nature is valued both in its own right and as for its role in spirituality. In other words, it is God. Traditional societies have considered certain sites as sacred where most human activities are prohibited. Remember this phrase. Traditional societies have considered certain sites as sacred where most human activities are prohibited. That is the heart of the Convention on Biological Diversity. Locking up nearly 50% of the land area of the United States is their solution to protecting biological diversity, and we'll talk about that later. The quote goes on by saying, most societies have also considered certain species as sacred, or how these species are incarnations of, or in some ways associated with gods and deities, or how they have magical powers. Reincarnation is a major factor with many of these people. Not all of them, but many of them. Hence, rocks will eventually incarnate into lower life forms, which will incarnate into animals and plants and so forth, which will eventually incarnate or evolve into human beings. Therefore, they have as much right as a human being. That's their logic.
Now, the Western worldview was created by the Jesuits in order to vilify it later once they had drained all the financial resources they could from all the countries who hold this Western progressive worldview, mostly Western countries. Now, that's what they're doing now with the move to cryptocurrencies. They're pillaging the wealth created by prosperous Western economies because these economies are now all in debt. Prosperity was the illusion, the temptation that everyone fell for. It's all being paid for with debt now owed to Jesuit central banks. This is the $500 trillion now owed worldwide by all world nations, all world nation corporate entities. They are all in debt to Jesuit central banks. So, they've been pillaging all the nations. That's what's going on right now as we shift from cash and cards to digital dots on the screen. Think I'm joking? I've never been more serious about anything in all my life. I do not ever make jokes or use comedy or humor in my messages because the messages are not humorous, not comedic, not funny. Everything I say is with absolute seriousness because it is serious. So prosperity was the illusion, the temptation, materialism. Everyone fell for it. Everyone ran for it for decades. And that was all paid for with debt now owed to Jesuit central banks. And this material prosperity is based on what the Jesuits call the denial of the sacred attributes of nature. That's what they're calling it now. The denial of the sacred attributes of nature. Materialism is against nature, and so materialism 100% is now evil, even though 10 years ago it was the best thing in the world. This is why people blame capitalism. Capitalism is not the problem. Money is never a problem. It's the use of money that is the problem. And of course, all the money has been used improperly because it's been controlled by the Jesuits for a long, long time now. Now, of course, Christianity is going to be scapegoated and blamed falsely for the destruction of nature because Christians don't worship nature or creation. They worship the creator of nature. Right? So, of course, we're going to be scapegoated because us Christians, we're so materialistic. We've been chasing prosperity and we've been destroying the world. Really? Who has been creating all the pollution? Who? Ask yourself this question. Well, it's been Jesuit corporations that have been pillaging the earth for thousands of years and creating all the pollution and disasters. Jesuit businesses, not you and I. So the Jesuits are now scapegoating you and I in order to get to the Christians, those little group, that little flock of God's people that are still have managed to avoid the beast marking system and are going to stand firm in their faith and reject all this ideology, this nature ideology, and they're going to reject the beast's rulership over them. The Pope is not happy with you and I if you are a true spirit-filled believer. He's not happy with you and I. He's angry. And he's coming after us. All the stuff that's being done in the world today is being done to target and corner you and I. That little group of God's true saints. Satan hates us and wants to wipe us out. He wants to eradicate us from the earth forever. And he's going to do it. And you had better believe that he's going to do it because the Bible says he will. And I'm here to tell you that bad news, but which is also good news because we get to leave and go to be with the Lord Jesus Christ forever. We get to leave this cesspool. The earth is a cesspool of wickedness, people. Now, the traditional worldview, remember there's two worldviews, the Western worldview and the traditional worldview, views all things living and non-living as being a community, apparently, and people who do not ascribe and adhere to this belief system will be viewed as the enemy of the earth or the earth goddess Gaia. 100% correct. Kaufman is speaking the truth here because he's reading from United Nations documents. Excuse me. Now, it is very clear that the national parks and conservation areas move early in the 20th century was originated in governing authorities who embraced the pagan traditional worldview. Once again, setting aside all that parkland, and in the United States, the big thing is the BLM in the West. Setting aside all that parkland for the people was a ploy was all by design. It's taken the world government more than 100 years to catch up with creating the laws that would eventually, excuse me, take everyone's freedom away and bar you and I from freely using those lands. It belongs to God. All this land belongs to God. And we were free to walk and go wherever we were, but we are increasingly now not free to go there. Very, very important to understand how the freedom is slowly taken away. It's not taken away immediately. Otherwise, the Jesuits would have mass world protests on their hands that they would not be able to control or suppress. Of course, that's never going to happen because people are gladly allowing themselves to be enslaved, running after money, running after their lives. Now, evolution and reincarnation are very similar ideas at the core, at the heart of the matter. Much of New Age nature worship, ritual, and belief is based on evolution and reincarnation and transformation. Very important to understand how all these ideas clip together. Now, here is the 7th video clip from the original video. Please watch, and I'll see you afterward.
And unless you understand this, you will be totally buffaloed or baffled by why they do certain things and why they are so zealous in protecting things of nature. And again, I do not want to denigrate the concept of stewardship and the responsibility that each and every one of us have in protecting and respecting what God has created. This has led then to the Earth Charter. The Earth Charter was created by none other than Maurice Strong, whom we've already talked about, as well as Mikhail Gorbachev, the former premier of the Soviet Union. These two men got together in 1992, took what they believed out of the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro and started to put together this Earth Charter. It was finally released this year in April, on April 15th. Now, the Earth Charter, according to Maurice Strong and Mikhail Gorbachev, in their writings, they say that a consensus has developed that the Earth Charter should be the articulation of a spiritual vision that reflects universal spiritual values, including but not limited to ethical values. A people's charter that serves as a universal code of conduct. Remember that. This is universal. Every one of us is going to have to ascribe to this particular concept. Universal code of conduct for ordinary citizens, educators, business executives, scientists, religious leaders, even the pastors of Christian churches will have to accept this new earth-based ethic called the Earth Charter. Going on, Mikhail Gorbachev and Maurice Strong say that the Earth Charter initiative reflects the conviction that a radical change in humanity's attitudes and values is essential to achieve social, economic, and ecological well-being in the 21st century. The Commission plans to circulate the final version of the Charter as a People's Treaty beginning in mid-1998. The Charter will be submitted to the United Nations General Assembly in the year 2000, which has been done. They are now considering the Earth Charter for ratification. And there is a treaty that's awaiting in the wings of the IUCN called the Covenant on the Environment and Development, that as soon as the United Nations accepts the Earth Charter, will be brought out as an international treaty for the nations to sign that will put into legal force the various provisions of this particular creed. This has real-world ramifications. The Bureau of Land Management, of which California has much, most of the eastern United States does not have any Bureau of Land Management land, but the western half of the United States does. In fact, the Bureau of Land Management controls most of western land. They came out in 1994, in March 30th of 94, with a plan called the Ecosystem Management. And in the chapter called the Human Dimensions of Ecosystem Management, the objective and purpose of that particular chapter states that all ecosystem management activities should consider human beings as a biological resource. In other words, you and I are nothing more than biological resources for these elite people in the Bureau of Land Management to manage. We have no more value than the rocks and the trees that they also manage. This right out of a government document. And needless to say, we took this to the U.S. Congress, and it's created quite a stir back in 1994. That language is no longer in there. The very fact that it was shows the mentality of these people. And that mentality was brought out very clearly this past year, the great fire season of the year 2000, in which we literally saw nearly 7 million acres burn up, primarily in southern Idaho and Montana, but really all over the western United States. It was a bad fire year. We were going to have a lot of fires, a lot of major fires. The problem was that because of this belief system that permeates the U.S. Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management now, many of these fires, the actual fire officials argued for as many as 3 days before they lifted the first shovel against those fires, whether or not they should send bulldozers in to build fire lines, because they may rip out a plant or two of an endangered species. 3 days they waited. And of course, if any of you have had fire management experience, and I have, while I was working, I have my degree in forestry, and while I was working in my younger years, I fought many project fires, and I'm very familiar with how to fight fires, especially in that part of the country, because I had my education in the western part of the United States. This is not the way you fight a fire. You put crews in there immediately, and you start building fire lines to contain that fire when it's still just a few hundred acres. If you can control that fire in the first 5 or 6 hours, chances are you can keep it to several hundred acres. By arguing for 3 days whether or not they should build fire lines, whether or not they should use retardants, airplane-dropped retardants, because some of those retardants may drift into streams and cause pollution in the streams, which could damage the aquatic life and some of the trout, the endangered trout, the bull trout. Meanwhile, while they're arguing about it, the fire advanced from several hundred acres to several thousand acres to 100,000 acres to 500,000 acres. The streams were boiled dry, the trout were killed, while they were back in the camp arguing whether or not they should be using these fire suppression techniques. This is the real world lunacy of this belief system. And I'm adamant about that word lunacy because you can describe it in no other way. It is lunacy. And they want to run the world this way. We have to stop them. It means the demise of civilization as we know it.
Now, Maurice Strong was a Canadian oil and mineral businessman and a diplomat who served as Undersecretary General of the United Nations. He was a high-ranking Freemason, a wicked hypocrite like Mikhail Gorbachev. And they got together and created this Earth Charter. Now, everything we see happening is leading to conformity to the Earth Charter, which underpins UN Agenda 30. This Earth Charter Universal Code of Conduct for every living soul is applicable to every living soul, and they must conform to it, or they will not be allowed to live. It's as simple as that. This all lines up with the coming implementation of both digital mark and digital money. which will force people to conform to this Earth Charter or Universal Code of Conduct. So they will both be required as part of adherence to the Universal Code of Conduct. And there will be no way around it. There will be no way out. It will be ground zero for God's people when this comes in full measure. And that's not too far away. So get yourself ready and prepared for that. Now, once again, Kaufman calls the belief system lunacy and says they want to run the world this way, once again, as if it is future and not now. They have been running the world this way already since 1945. We just didn't see it. We weren't told about it. We were warned here and there. But Kaufman does not see this. In 2001, he did not see this. He's talking about the future. He could not even see what the UN was doing all around him. So this was already happening in 2001, but his belief that a one world government was future blinded him from seeing that it was already too late in 2001. It was already too late. Now, the lunatic is on the grass. Pink Floyd wrote in a song called Brain Damage from Dark Side of the Moon. Many of you will be familiar with that song spell album of sorcery. And they were right. How did they know? How did they know in 1973 that the lunatic was on the grass? Unless it was a demonic prophecy, which I believe it is. So the lunatics are on the grass and in the halls of power and in our heads with all the madness that they have created. The lunatic, the lunacy, as Kaufman says, is real. And it has been rising since 1945. It's been there all the time, people. They can't achieve their agenda of world deception overnight. It takes time. And it's taken 80 years to get to where we are here since 1945. The goal is total world pantheism, worship of nature, with worship of the beast who is, who will be, who is, will be. You see, it's confusing. Is he? Yes, he is already. Will he be? Yes, he will be. In total control of all, everything. Imagine a world empire of darkness controlled by one man completely, with everyone totally enslaved. That is what we're slowly walking into. It's almost here, people. So here is the 8th video clip from the longer video. Please watch, and I'll see you after.
It's not hard to imagine that if you believe that humans are the cause of all the Earth's problems, that we're overpopulated. And indeed, this document, the Global Biodiversity Assessment, states that the population growth has exceeded the capacity of the Earth's biosphere to support us. They give 2 solutions, and only 2, to this problem. The first is that it's estimated that an agricultural world in which most human beings are peasants should be able to support 5 to 7 billion people. Well, folks, we have 6 billion people right now. That means all of us in this room, or nearly all of us in this room, are going to have to become agrarian peasants if we use this solution. Do you want to become an agrarian peasant? Do you want to live in a metal shack someplace with a dirt floor, maybe a bed or 2? You want to have them tell you how many kids you can have? Because this is exactly what they have in mind. This is their solution. This isn't mine. I didn't use the word peasants They use the word peasants. Now, not too many of us are too wild about that particular option, are we? They give you a different option. In contrast, they go on to say a reasonable estimate for an industrialized world society at the present North American material standard of living would be 1 billion people. So if we wanted to maintain our current standard of living, we would have to reduce the Earth's human population by somewhere around 70% in the next 30 to 50 years, according to this document. Those are the only two solutions that they provided to what they consider the human overpopulation. A reduction in the Earth's human population by about 70%. So 70% of us, or 7 out of 10 of us in this room, would have to offer ourselves up on the altar of nature in order to save planet Earth. It's lunacy. It's absolute lunacy. It's what's led Jacques Cousteau, the famous oceanographer, you've seen many of his programs on television, to tell UNESCO in 1993, about 3 years before he died, that the only hope of saving planet Earth is to eliminate 350,000 human beings a day. 350,000 human beings a day. He said, I don't like it, but that's the only solution. Why? It's the only solution to him because this is what he believes. Now, the United Nations was wise enough not to put in a method of how they're going to eliminate 70% of the Earth's human population in the next 30 to 50 years. That would have probably caused too many eyebrows to rise. But in a different part of the document, they gave a pretty good hint as to how they planned to do it. They go on in the agricultural section, he says that fertilizers have played an essential part in producing the world's harvest is undisputed. In other words, they're saying that the Green Revolution from the 1970s, 60s, and 70s that actually doubled, quadrupled, and so forth food production that fed the world with an increasing population. Yes, we had starvation, but it wasn't because there wasn't enough food. It was because of poor distribution or more likely corrupt governments. They recognized that the Green Revolution solved the problem. But they go on to say, it is estimated that if the use of fertilizers ceased, the world's harvest would be cut almost in half. It goes on to say, however, the negative side of the equation is that nitrates from fertilizers seep into the groundwater aquifers and so forth, and therefore we must reduce or eliminate the use of fertilizers. Now, I realize there is a lot of good evidence to suggest that we just can't pour fertilizers on and expect to have the nutrition that we should have. I'm not going to get into that discussion tonight. The fact that I want to get into is the fact that they're willing to take a course of action that would reduce the world's food production by 1/2, in this case, probably more because they would also reduce the use of pesticides, knowing full well what would happen if they did that we would lose 50 to 60 to 70% of the Earth's human population in the next 30 to 50 years. It's astonishing. It literally is astonishing what this belief system will do to the mind of an otherwise normal thinking human being, willing to kill and subvert their fellow man for the good of their god, planet Earth, or the Greek goddess Gaia.
It's really important to understand that the Jesuits are not joking about this peasant reality that they have planned. They're not joking. Thank God that God's people won't be on earth to suffer this wickedness and misery. It will be far worse than what is being described even in Revelation, where we have some detail from Revelation 16, but not a lot of detail, but it will be terrible. People have no idea what is coming for those who are marked and obedient to the image of the beast world government. Now, most of these people, are already injected, tested, and believe in the Save the Mother Earth philosophy. They're all in on this. I see it all around me. in this town that I live in. The New Age philosophy is everywhere. So Satan's saved planet Earth is nothing more than worshiping the creation rather than the creator. Kaufman says that the UN didn't put into the document how they're going to achieve 70% population reduction. He didn't live long enough to see or experience the fake COVID pandemic that happened 2 years after he died. And that is how they planned to do it. Poison injections. Mass poisoning. Just like they poison rats, they've been poisoning humans. Voluntary and getting people to voluntarily euthanize themselves. That's what they've been doing, people. We are going to see a death wave continue to roll out over the next few years, which is going to deplete whole populations worldwide in a big way. Kaufman is totally right about corrupt governments and businesses being responsible for starvation and poverty in a world of plenty. There's no shortage of food or resources in this world. Anybody who says this has no idea of the truth. The world was packed full of resources by God right from the beginning for our use. And of course, it's all being mismanaged. There's no shortage of anything in this world. There's only corruption and mismanagement and greed. Now, Kaufman is also totally right about the reduction in food grown to create food scarcity and possibly mass starvation of people groups. We've already seen this in Africa and in a few other places. And that may lie just ahead of us. Starvation, poverty on a mass scale. We are already watching hundreds of thousands of farmers on all continents being pushed off the land they have been farming for generations through the deliberate destruction of crops with weather warfare, deliberate indebtedness by banks, and the deliberate destruction of agricultural markets. Now, people who worship the creation become fanatics and will kill anyone who threatens nature. These people are given over to the mind of Satan. It really is the end. Paul didn't write the first 2 chapters in the book of Romans warning about nature idolatry for no reason. The warning to us is very, very strong. Now, here's the 9th and last video clip from the longer video. Please watch, and I'll see you after.
They also discuss property rights in this particular document. They say that property rights are not absolute. They're not unchanging. They're not inalienable like our Constitution and the Declaration of Independence states. Rather, they are a complex, dynamic, and shifting relationship between 2 or more parties over space or time. In other words, whatever the United Nations says they are, whenever the United Nations wants to change the definition. You can continue to pay the taxes, but the United Nations is going to be able to tell you what you can and cannot do. This was reaffirmed as I was on the evening of the 29th of September 1994. We had gotten this document FedEx to us. I'll explain how in a little while. We had this document explained to, or FedEx to us, chapter 10, and we divided up the responsibility as who's going to read what. And I was reading very fast in this document, highlighting things I wanted the U.S. Senate to see. And I came across this statement right here. Property rights can still be allocated to the environmental public good, but in this case, they should be restricted to usufructual or usufructual? What in the world is usufructual? I had no idea. I thought it was a swear word. I had to go look it up in my dictionary, and the dictionary I used was a 1956 Collegiate Dictionary, Webster Dictionary. Shows you how old I am. And in that dictionary, I was stunned to read that the concept, it's not that way it's written, it's very much softened in today's dictionaries. You can still see it there, but it's not as clear-cut as the dictionary I used, and that basically said that the concept, the usufruct concept, was first developed by the Romans in the Roman Empire, and it means the Caesar owns everything. And he allocates out by right and privilege to those whom he wants the right to grow crops, the right to build a home, the right to build a business, whatever it is that these people want to do. You have to kowtow, you have to grovel before the local governor in order to be able to do that, because he holds all the property rights.
Now, what Kaufman says about property rights is what we see happening right now worldwide as they collapse real estate markets and dispossess people. They're pushing real estate prices through the roof and putting people out of their homes. There's a deliberate reason for doing this. So what Kaufman says is 100% true. In my video number 305 titled Crowns, I explained why no one owns property. If you haven't watched that video, then I urge you to do so. Now, video number 305 titled Crowns. Because I'm not joking about what I'm saying. People just do not understand that no one owns property. They may own a house, a shed, but they do not own the land it sits on. They may have bought land, but they don't own it. They are leasing it. At any time, a governmental authority can tell you to move because of one reason or another, and they'll give you almost nothing for the house because that's all you own. You see? You can take the house with you if you can. Yes, you can buy and sell a house and make a profit. They'll let you do that because you have to pay taxes on the sale to the Roman governing authority. The house usually stays where it was built. See? And they just keep reselling it and taxing it and retaxing it. They're making money hand over fist on taxes. Nobody owns land. All you own is the house. And if you get thrown off that land, they'll say, take the house with you if you can. Because they'll just build another one. It's a hard truth and it's a hard reality, but it is the truth. If you've been paying off a mortgage to the bank, you'll never own that land. You will own the house, but that's all. Now, usufructuary is another word for temporary use tenant with no rights essentially. This is the word that Kaufman is using. Usufructuary. It's a strange term. But this is what we see in China. No one in China owns land. No one in Russia owns land. But at least they understand this. Westerners don't get it. They think that they are the landowners. That reality stopped a long time ago in North America and other countries. The Roman Catholic cult are the landowners. Did you hear Kaufman explain where this idea comes from? Usufructuary? Yes. Rome. There you go. He doesn't seem to put much emphasis on it, but he acknowledges where this term comes from. It comes from the Romans, and the Romans are still employing it all over the world. Nobody owns the land. Rome owns the land. And it means that Caesar owns everything. Then and now, nothing has changed. And who's the Caesar? Well, the Roman Catholic Pope is the Caesar. He's the papal Caesar. The Roman papal Caesar owns all land worldwide. That's a fact. You and I are tenants for life. Doesn't matter what you want to think about your house. You don't own the land. You own the bricks and mortar. So you and I are tenants for life. You will own nothing and be happy. Remember that? Now you know why they said this, to mock everyone during COVID. It's because it's true. They were letting us know. People think they own what they have, but they don't. Caesar owns it all. They can literally come and take it away from you and I if and when they choose to. And at some point they might. This is exactly how it was during the Dark or Middle Ages. The vast majority of the population worked land for a landowner. It was an agrarian economy. These people owned nothing. They worked the land for the owner in return for food and a shed to live in. We have come full circle, and the beast is about to remove all our modern privileges if we do not obey his image of the beast, UN, world government, and take his mark. Now imagine where we are now, people. 24 years after this message by Kaufman in 2001, the year of 9/11. That video reveals the truth about everything I have been saying in 415 video messages. It's saying the same thing. I have been warning everyone as diligently as I could have. The United Nations is the image created by the nations under Jesuit guidance in 1945 and described in Revelation 13. This image world government has power over all the peoples of the world. Listen to what verse 15 of Revelation chapter 13 says, and I'll read it. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Who is he? He is the earth beast. Who is the earth beast? The earth beast is the Jesuit order. Who told the people to create the image? The Jesuit order. What is the image? It is a governmental body that speaks and causes those who refuse to obey its mandates, its laws, its agendas to be killed. I hope you're getting this and understanding this. Worship is obedience. It is one and the same thing to God and to Satan. They are both authoritarians. They have both a kingdom. They both have an hierarchy of control. Yes, they do. And all human beings are serving somebody. That means that they are obeying one kingdom or the other. That's how it works, people. It doesn't matter whether you don't like it, whether you disagree. It is the truth. It's reality. Worship is obedience. It is one and the same thing. Romans 6:16 tells us that very clearly. Paul says, do you not know that to whom you yield yourselves as slaves for obedience, you are slaves to him you obey, whether of sin to death or of obedience to righteousness? You see? Sin to death. That's worshiping the beast and his image of the beast government. Obedience to righteousness. You see, that's worshiping Jesus Christ and obeying his word. There's only two ways to go. There only ever has been two ways to go. There's only ever been two rulers. There's only ever been two kingdoms. Whether you like it or not makes no difference to the reality of what this is and where it's going to end up for you and I. Reject it and die. Believe it, repent, and you will live. They may kill you first, but you will live eternally. Now, the United Nations is the Roman world government and rules the world under the Jesuit order. Please watch my video number 261 titled The Image and video number 389 titled Rise of the Image. These videos will explain in more detail what I have just touched upon briefly in this video message. Now, we were warned many times, people, and the vast majority of people ignored the warnings over the decades and even centuries in the modern age. Men who saw what was being planned by the Roman beast world government hierarchy tried to warn us in the best way that they could. Yes, they did. More than 3,000 books were written and published warning about the Jesuit threat alone over the last 400 years. Did people know? Oh, yes, they did. Will they be held accountable? Oh, yes, they will. There will be no excuse at the judgment. Were we warned by men and by God's word? Yes, yes, yes. And so that everyone will be held to account for refusing to heed the warning and repent. The warning was not so that people could rise up and overthrow their governments, but so that we, as God's true saints, could see the signs of the end and prepare for the final showdown with the forces of darkness, just as the Bible describes to us. They are going to kill us before this is all over, and we had better be prepared to face this reality and be ready to die for the Lord Jesus Christ when called to do so. That's just the way it is, people. You can accept it or reject it. The choice is yours. So please, please, please consider carefully where you are at spiritually right now and do what God is telling you to do in His Word. Don't wait. If there is ongoing sin in your life, then get rid of it. Stop it. You know, you're listening, and you know what you're doing in your life. You know what you are doing, what you've done wrong, what you are doing wrong. You don't need me to tell you. Your conscience is telling you all along what is wrong. Listen to your conscience. Stop sinning and get right with God. Get rid of all false teachings as well. Because adhering to false teachings or heresies is sin. Yes, it is. If you are embracing any false teachings, you are sinning. The Bible is very clear about this. So you had better weed out all false teachings and get rid of them, because God will hold you to account one day for believing in things that were absolutely false and diametrically opposed to His Word. Time is very short, and it takes time sometimes to get these things right. So you better get to it if that's you that I'm talking about. Please don't wait. Get yourself repented fully, water baptized, and filled with the Holy Ghost, speaking in tongues before it's too late. because time is really of the essence now more than ever as we watch the world transform rapidly for the last time. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and I pray that God will continue to open your eyes as you search for the truth on all things regarding the will of God for your life. I'll put all pertinent links in the description box below as I am able. Please share this information with others as you're able, if you're able. If you know anybody who is untested, uninjected, unmarked, and unsaved, share these messages with them if they have ears to hear, as you're able, because time to do so is running out. And hopefully, whoever you share with will listen and respond and be gloriously saved and filled with the Holy Ghost. Please share so that they too can be saved from this evil world kingdom of darkness. As I've been saying in previous videos, I may suddenly be unable to post anymore, and who knows, all kinds of weird stuff is happening online with social media. Make sure that you have a backup channel if you want to continue listening to these messages. Make sure you have a second or a third option if one of those channels suddenly disappears, or you suddenly can't access Darkness is Falling video channel anymore. Go to another channel. Finally, if my video channels are pulled down and you want to continue to listen to the message, please go to my website, darknessisfalling.com, where you can not only listen to the latest video, but you can download all my videos and record them so that you can listen to them again, because they're packed full of information, and listening to them once, you will never remember more than 15% of what you heard. So if you want to keep the videos, you can download them from darknessisfalling.com. You can listen to them there. If all my video channels go to darknessisfalling.com. And I'll do my best to keep uploading my videos there until they take my website down, because it is going to happen, people. People can't believe that this is going to happen. It's going to happen. All truth is going to be erased from online at some point. So please go to darknessisfalling.com. Use all the facilities there. Lots of information there. My blogs are there. You can read my blogs. You can listen to my videos there. And there's more than 80 pages of information about all manner of topics related to the Roman Catholic cult and the Jesuit order and the kingdom of God. You can also find nearly 200 books, book files that you can download for free, of books that have gone out of publication, and some are rare and difficult to find, exposing the Jesuit Vatican shadow empire. So please go to darknessisfalling.com while that online resource is still available. I will renew the subscription in a few months' time, but there's no guarantee that the website is going to remain there for a long time. None whatsoever. When we look at what's happening in the world and what they're doing online and erasing truth, there's no guarantee that it will be there for a long time. So please use it while it's available. And as I've been saying in previous videos, I may suddenly be unable to post anymore, so who knows. Please have backup measures if you wish to continue getting messages from this ministry. I pray that God would keep and bless you all in the perilous days that lie directly ahead of us. And I really hope to see you in another video message. God bless you richly.